topic of Per Diem today is trust and rapport. What are they? Why are they misunderstood? And how to truly build them?
Why do you feel like trust and report are misunderstood among like sales rep in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, well, I'll start with rapport. Rapport is usually misunderstood because people think that it's complimenting people.
Okay.
So they'll be like, oh, this is this boat picture in the background, and let me compliment you and get you to try to like me. But it actually, when you break it down, it's a French term, and it means
Oui.
to be oui. It means to be brought back. So if I had to guess what it's being brought back to is your buyer is typically on the side of they want to buy the fewest amount of products at the lowest ticket item, ticket price to just solve problems. The seller is trying to sell as many products as they can for the highest ticket price, and it's restoring yourself to the view of the buyer of they just want to solve problems as cheaply and effectively as possible. So I feel like that's why rapport is misunderstood.
So do you feel like people are more focused on being liked than actually focusing on building trust and building reports?
Yeah, I think yeah, exactly. Like they're after complimenting people, or they're after like saying nice things, or like intro talk, or like people will say a lot of times, this is how I know it's off, is a lot of different methodologies. It will say the beginning stage, the first thing you should do is build rapport. So what they mean by that is like, that basically they should build some kind of connection or some kind of bond is how they view it. Now, trust, I think why that one's misunderstood is trust, when you break it down to the definition, it means that you have a firm belief in the ability, the verity of something, like that it's true, and the integrity of something, meaning like the quality of it, how unbroken up is it, the ability, and the reliability.
Okay.
So it's not just, I feel like people think I'm trustworthy because I tell the truth.
Okay.
And it's like, that's part of it. That's table stakes in any profession, in my view. But the big piece of it that I think is an open question mark for buyers that people aren't answering with their discovery calls or their cold calls is, I need to be able to trust that you're able to do it and that you can deliver in a reliable manner. And that's going to come down to skill, not telling the truth. And so I think that's why that one's misunderstood.
So for you, essentially, like, do you feel like there are also risks of building trust without being manipulative?
Do I think there's a risk that of building trust without being manipulative?
That usually like sellers would tend to try, like to manipulate a little bit the conversation in order, and I'm gonna give you an example in a second, in order to build more trust. Classical example is tell the buyers that they're not a fit. So they ask for more, and then you can close like saying like, I don't think you're gonna be a fit, or like I feel it's too expensive for you, or like this type of things. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So then the person feels the need to show that.
100%.
Yeah. So it's like classical, pushy, salesy type of methodology,
It's just the anti-sale.
manipulative. Yeah, for me it's the anti-sales. But do you feel like people would use this methodology like to build trust, or believe that this is how you build trust?
I think that a lot of people use it, and that's what I'm seeing that's expanding over and over and over again. Is a great example is, let's say it's a book called Never Spit the Difference. And it's talking all about techniques to make someone feel more heard, or feel more understood, or feel more X, Y, and Z. And then I saw a bunch of trainers basically doubling on the back and saying, yeah, so you should do this, or mirroring techniques, or labeling techniques. And it's all so that the person feels like they can trust you more, which is okay if it's dependent upon your goal. If your intent is, I need to have this person trust me so that they open up with more information so that I can diagnose them, because people don't make it easy. That's why they even say like, hey, you need to tell your doctors the truth, because it's hard, like people don't make it easy. But the whole goal of that technique piece is to get people to trust you so that they buy your stuff more, which would be fine if you're truly diagnosing, and if you're truly, like, once you get on the back end and the intent and goal and the agenda in the situation is paramount. It's everything. Like all of these different pieces, challenging, building trust, building rapport, are all going to be a part of, okay, a part of the process in diagnosing. But if that's not your end goal, then essentially all you're doing is manipulating someone into feel like they're being heard without their best interests in mind. It's not necessarily dichotomous of like, I don't have their best interests in mind. It's that I only have mine. So by definition, theirs is going to be, you know, by the leeway at best.
Okay.
It's nuts.
Yeah, I think there's a
What do
whole
you
like
think?
I think the way we teach sales in general is not like is not taught in a way to build trust with your prospects.
Totally.
Because the incentive that people are getting is on quota, on deal closed, on meeting booked, etc. It's nothing is based on trust.
Totally.
So people will always optimize on the thing they are measured for.
100%.
And in my opinion, if we want to see more sellers build trust with prospect, we first need to have them understand that they're consultants and not just sellers.
Totally.
Because for me, like the first way to build trust is really understand your buyer, potentially like bring them value in a sense of what is the problem that they're not aware of that I can directly tackle.
100%.
And then what type of solution do I offer even prior to actually trying to sell something. For me, I think like even if we look, you know, like at the way people are selling today, I would say that if a seller has two options, option one is to close the deal, or option two is to say that it's not a fit for XYZ reason, and I think like you don't need like our product or service, and you can do XYZ. I do feel like people will always like favor like closing the deals, just because they don't want to. They are incentivized on quota.
Of course.
So for them, it's like, okay, I'm just doing my job. Like they're gonna benefit a little bit from it, but the issue is after that they've lost the relationship, because people are gonna realize one day or another that it was not a fit.
Totally. And I think how you're defining relationship or what I get from it, and I couldn't agree more, is it's not just about this sale.
Yeah.
It's about renewal. It's about upsell. It's
Referral,
about cross-sell. It's
yeah.
about referral. It's about they go to a different company.
Yeah.
Therefore, like, I can't tell you the amount of business I have on that. And it's like, if you screw up that first relationship, like, to me, at best case scenario, like, it's not the smart way to sell. Like, meaning, if I sell you this one product, it's like, okay, maybe I hit a little piece of my quota, but I only want to sell you something that's actually going to take care of you, because even if I'm money motivated, even if I'm driven just after my bank, the smarter play is to know what that relationship is going to cause. And like a great example is there was a guy yesterday in LA who was in the crowd who I had turned down. I said, I'm not going to sell to you because I listened to his quota and his quota attainment. Yeah. And I was like, you have 25 booked meetings on outbound a month, and your ASP, I got it wrong. It wasn't 20K, it was 35K.
Fuck, okay.
And I'm like, with no inbound.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, you're already doing incredibly. Like, you know, and what that causes all of a sudden is he wants to feed me into 2 deals with his friends. He was there last night. I didn't even ask him to show up because I gained some trust with him of like, hey, I'm going to have your back. To your point, people are starting to manipulate that technique, trying to downsell to see if it's a fit, or they're saying where there's a product weakness. And I think, you know, the interesting thing, and then we can can wrap up, is I remember when I was in Brazil, and this is a crazy story, but I basically went to this city called Pirenópolis, and there's 78 waterfalls. And something happened to where we were going to hike 2 miles around to go to a waterfall, and it started pouring rain. There was like a whole bunch of snakes all around, all around because of rain. I mean, it was the rainforest. And we got 2 miles around and realized that there was only one bridge that crossed over. And it had these signs that basically said, you know, I don't speak Portuguese, but I could, and he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Portuguese, but we were like kind of meeting in the middle on broken Spanish. I'm like, this thing says danger, don't cross it. And it's one of those like bridges with the wooden planks. And I'm like, this is very much so a movie. Yeah. And he's like, and it bridges over basically this huge body of water that was several hundred feet, you know, deep. And so he goes first because I know what he's thinking in his head. Like, we can't go 2 miles all the way back around. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he was going first and he was hitting the boards. And I'm like, so I'm like, okay, my heart was like pounding. And I'm like, I'm just going to cross this bridge. I was like, he was hitting every plank. And I'm like, well, if someone's going to die, he's going to die first. And so I crossed this bridge. And I remember calling my mom and saying, like, if you looked at this bridge, Mom, you just wouldn't trust it. And what I meant was, it's an inanimate object.
Yeah.
It's that I didn't trust that it would hold up. I didn't trust in the quality of it. I didn't trust that it would do what it needed to do in the moment. So I don't think that this is a problem with the actual person itself. I think it's a problem with how we're defining the function of sales, and also like that we're misdefining it as convincing as opposed to diagnosing to help someone. And then also how we're defining the KPI system, because even if we go off your example, if we built a KPI system off of their ability to trust you, for someone to trust you after you diagnose and you prescribe the product, it should work. Otherwise you're going to lose trust. So you should be looking at markers like renewal, upsell, cross-sell, NPS score, all of that stuff. And if we thought about those things in mind, I think that we would view the sales process much differently, but we don't. We're just like, say nice things, compliment someone, and be nice to them, in the beginning so that they like you and they want to buy. Swipe the credit card.
Agree.
But I made it over the bridge. Speaking of bridge, this was Per Diem, our last episode. So episode San Francisco on why trust and rapport are misunderstood and what you should do to build them both. Toodles.